We'll be talking today about meditation techniques that deal with certain mental states like anger and sadness and that sort of thing. So if you're presently getting professional psychiatric or psychological help, or if you require it, then please seek professional advice before undertaking them. All right, so let's begin. So hello and welcome to this introduction to the project called A Part of Our World. My name is Sam Coffey, and I'm going to share my story about how this project came to be. I've wanted to do this project since early 1996 when I was 21, and that was following a couple of back-to-back meditation retreats that I went on. But I was pressured out of doing the project, and I'll get to that a bit later on. But I've thought about doing the project every day of these past 25 years, and now it's time to move forward with it. So the project is called A Part of Our World, or APOW for short. So the fundamental message of APOW is that our psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being are all interdependent on one another's, including that of other creatures and the whole of our natural world. And so that it is therefore crucial that we protect our natural environment, rehabilitate the damaged parts of it that we can, and ultimately achieve environmental sustainability. So in this introduction, we're going to look at why this is an ultimate truth that the meditation reveals. We'll highlight relevant insights from the meditation, like why we generate negativity such as anger or fear, plus how they are stored in our minds and bodies. We'll also talk about how the meditation stops us generating such negativities and how it purifies us of our old storehouse of them from our past. We'll talk about how this strengthens the qualities of the purified mind. So qualities like love, sympathetic joy at the greatness of others, which basically means being happy for other people's success or that sort of thing. Compassion, along with our overall happiness. So we'll also touch on why it has taken me so long to share this project, which further exposes another related crisis in our world. And that is the problem of misinformation, disinformation, and the straight out lies that are widely spread to the general public by certain corrupted parties. Lastly, we'll define the project APOW and how it strives for the implementation of the solutions to these challenges from the level of individual action to the collective. So the meditation that we're talking about here today is called Vipassana, and it's the deepest form of mindfulness meditation, taught by the teacher named S.N. Goenka. Goenka unfortunately passed away in 2013, but in an obituary article later written about him in the New York Times, which that's a screen grab of on the right there, it makes the point that if someone has any interest in mindfulness meditation today, it is due in part to him. So such is the enormity of his legacy. And I'd recommend having a look at that article, just Googling it and have a read of it. It's very, very good. The meditation technique has one observed the reality of what is happening within them, both at the level of the mind and at the level of the body, as well as the interaction between the two. So an example of this interaction between mind and body is that angry thoughts manifest physically as unpleasant sensations or feelings in our body. So these unpleasant feelings being the feelings of anger, what could be described as inattention, pressure, and that boiling up inside. So understanding this interaction between mind and body makes it clear that our physical and mental actions determine our own level of inner happiness, as well as our own level of inner peace. The golden rule is a well-known foundation of morality. It says to treat others the way you yourself wish to be treated. So examples of that include not harming others as I wouldn't want other people to harm me, not lying to others as I wouldn't want others to lie to me, not stealing from others as I wouldn't want others to steal from me. So this rule, the golden rule, isn't a construct. It's more of a biological guide. It's part of the manual on how a human being operates to have a happy life. It isn't in place just to protect potential victims. It's in place to protect potential perpetrators too. As to break the golden rule, one must first generate a tremendous amount of mental negativity, which causes suffering by the way of inattentions and agitations. So for example, for someone to harm another, one must first generate mental negativities such as anger, hatred, and ill will. To steal, they must first generate mental negativity such as craving and greed. And to commit a sexual assault, a person must first generate a tremendous amount of mental negativities such as lust. So all mental negativities, they're not pleasant for the person generating them to experience. So like anger, they cause their own kinds of inattentions along with a variety of agitations in the mind and body. This, by definition, causes the person generating them to suffer. It is a self-harm they inflict upon themselves that causes wounds for them at their psychological, spiritual, and physical levels. The levels of suffering our negative actions cause us range from the mild to the severe. So generally speaking, mental actions are less severe than verbal actions, and verbal actions are less severe than physical actions. The intent to harm by perpetrators forms additional wounds for them to bear, as does their accomplishment should they be successful, if they end up hurting someone, for example. So if a person generating angry thoughts takes it a step further and actions those thoughts by verbally abusing somebody, then they take their own suffering a step further too, and they worsen their self-inflicted wounds. If they then take their anger further than verbal and express it physically by hitting the other person, then they again increase their own suffering and they worsen their self-inflicted wounds. So these wounds are caused by our negative mental and physical actions as they fundamentally go against our true higher essence as human beings. But we'll return to this shortly. Now, the victim on the receiving end of this anger may also self-inflict psychological, spiritual, and physical wounds, dependent on whether they react negatively to the situation. So, for example, they may react with a deep fear and anxiety that is perhaps such a significant cut or wound to their psyche that they end up suffering from it for the whole of their life. They may end up being deeply scarred and traumatized by the experience. It's important to note, though, that mild negative actions can also become severe if repeated over time. So, for example, a person who increasingly thinks anxious thoughts, gradually becoming more and more anxious over time, eventually may develop an anxiety disorder, suffering from panic attacks that ends up debilitating their life. So this is an example of an initially a mild self-inflicted wound that became severe by them metaphorically continually picking at it and making it worse. So it's a kind of similar idea to that saying of death by 1,000 cuts. Now, thankfully, the meditation shows us that it's possible to stop ourselves from generating mental negativities. The process of understanding how begins with the act of simple self-observation, where we can see that when we generate a mental negativity like anger, it is a reaction to something that has happened to us, our reaction being the final step in what is a 4-step process. So, for example, someone who is verbally abused by another person and then reacts with their own angry abuse back, they go through these 4 steps. So let's go through these steps together. The first step is their sense of hearing is activated as they hear sounds. So their hearing consciousness arises. The second thing that happens is that they then quickly perceive these sounds to be words of abuse being directed towards them, which they then evaluate as being very bad. They don't like this abuse. The third step is they then get sensations in the body. they get unpleasant feelings or sensations flood throughout their body. So the words of abuse, it doesn't make them feel good. In fact, it's the opposite. It makes them feel terrible. So the fourth step, they then react to that unpleasant sensation or feelings in their body, and they react with aversion away from them. So in this case, their aversion expresses itself as anger, and they then abuse the other person back. Now, the opposite thing happens, though, if the person receives words of praise. So they're not receiving words of abuse, they're receiving words of praise. Now, in this instance, they still go through the same four-step process, but at the second step, where they evaluate the words as being very good. They really like these words. They like receiving these words of praise. So the sensations that flow in their body now are very pleasant for them. They like the feeling of these words. They again react to these sensations, to these sensations which are now pleasant, but this time they react with a craving for more of the same. So the four steps again are consciousness arises, then perception and evaluation, followed by sensations arising in the body, and then followed by reaction. So these two examples showcase the two categories of reaction, one being aversion and the other being craving. Both kinds are initiated by the first step. For example, hearing in these two examples, they heard sounds that ended up being either abuse or praise. But the same four-step process happens whenever any of our five senses are activated. It happens when our hearing, touch, taste, sight, or smell is activated. And not only those, it is also activated by the kinds of thoughts we have. So think about what it's like to smell something that stinks really bad, or see something horrific, or hear a harsh, loud-sounding bang, taste something that's disgusting, touch something that hurts, or think a negative thought. And we can see that even just by imagining these things, they cause unpleasant feelings or sensations in the body. On the other hand, if we think about what it's like to see something beautiful, hear a gorgeous sound, taste something that's truly delicious, feel a loving touch, smell a beautiful scent, or think a positive thought, we see that just by imagining these things, that they cause pleasant bodily feelings or sensations. So these unpleasant or pleasant feelings are what we react to, with either aversion away from or with a craving for more of. It's important to note too that not all experiences are either pleasant or unpleasant. Many are just neutral and invoke no reaction at all. So when you think about it, we're all like islands of consciousness in a sea of experiences that are constantly lapping at our shores. Only experiences that stand out as pleasant or unpleasant cause either craving or aversion. Now, the terms craving and aversion may seem a little abstract, so it can help to recognize them by their more common descriptive names. So when we personally generate such things as anger, hatred, ill will, restlessness, anxiety, sadness, fear, guilt, inferiority, or jealousy, we are having a reaction of aversion away from an experience or feeling that we don't want to have. When we personally generate such things as lust, ego, greed, arrogance, possessiveness, or vanity, we're having a reaction of craving for more of the same feeling we are experiencing or for a feeling that we want to have. It may seem as things outside of us that cause cravings and aversions, but it's clear when we look inside that we ourselves are ultimately responsible for generating them, regardless of whether they seem blind or automatic. There is, though, a weak link in the four steps where the meditation begins its work to liberate us from generating these negativities. So things happen in our world that we either like or don't like. No one has a life where everything goes exactly the way they want or where unwanted things don't happen to them. And I think a good example of that at the moment is COVID for all of us, and the restrictions it's put on us and the pressures and all that sort of thing. So the meditation can't work at the first step, though we can make choices in life that give us the best chances at favorable outcomes. So for example, if we eat healthily and have a healthy lifestyle, then we're giving ourselves our best chance to experience good health. Though the meditation does eventually work on the second step of the 4-step process, so that being our perception and evaluation of what's happened or happening, it begins its work at the 3rd step, which is where sensation arises. So a good way for us to talk about how and to explain how it does this is to imagine that we're already in the midst of generating a mental negativity like anger. So we have our angry thoughts going on, and in our body, we've got accompanying unpleasant, angry feelings in the body. So things like inattention boiling up inside, and we feel like we're about to blow our top. So when we're generating anger, there's one of 3 ways we can respond to it. We can either express it, we can either suppress it, or we can observe it. Now, expression can be done mentally, verbally, and physically. So you mentally roll in angry thoughts. We can verbally abuse somebody or physically attack someone. But doing that does not actually release anger. It might seem like we're letting it out by expressing it, like we're letting it go, but really we're just making it more a part of us. The more someone expresses their anger, the more it becomes their default normal state of being. So we know through modern medicine that it impacts the neuroplasticity of the person's brain, the person that's generating a lot of anger, making it more natural and likely for them to be angry, to think angry thoughts. Additionally, if someone's feeling angry all the time in the body, they're just feeling tense and angry all the time, then that feeling of anger will greet everything that comes into contact with them, thus making them more likely to react with anger. A person too can become so used to feeling anger in their body that they come to be attached or addicted to the experience. So even though they may understand that generating anger causes them to suffer, they do it anyway, as giving it up seems too uncomfortable a transition. This is similar to someone with a drinking or drug problem, or even quite similar to someone who can't stop eating chocolate. This person craves the way the drink, drug, or chocolate makes them feel. And when that feeling wears off, they get the unpleasant experience of suffering withdrawals. So they have it again so that they can feel it again. There is both craving and aversion at play here. Craving for the experience and aversion away from the feeling of the withdrawals. They are addicted to how it makes them feel, and as their craving increases, so too does their dosage. So all negative mental actions are unpleasant to our sense of touch to experience. That is our sense of touch from inside the body. So for example, when we feel angry, which I'm using a lot as the example tonight, it makes us feel all tense inside, like we're boiling up, which is an unpleasant experience at the sense of touch. So this is the first step of the 4 that ends with another reaction. So the unpleasant experience of anger causes its own negative reaction. So this is cause and effect, where the effect then becomes the new cause for a new effect, and on it goes. For example, a person may get angry, and that causes them to get more angry. That can then lead to them generating feelings of hatred. This is just an example, by the way. It's just a journey that someone can take who starts off feeling angry. They can then feel more anger, then that can move over to them generating feelings of hatred. That can then lead to them generating feelings of ill will, which then can lead to them generating ego, which then can lead to them generating arrogance, then to greed, then possibly to more anger. And then after all that, they may end up craving for peace of mind to get away from all the turmoil. But what they're really craving, their craving for the peace of mind is really a craving for the feelings associated with that peace of mind. So that's now become an additional source of suffering for them because they're craving after it, which is just more inattention. We reap what we sow. Negativities lay the seed for further negativities in the same way that positivities lay the seed for further positivity. This is known as cause and effect, reaping what you sow, or in the meditation, what is known as karma. Another danger that comes with expressing negativity is that, similar to what happens when someone drinks too much alcohol, when we express our anger or any other negative mental reaction, we run the risk of becoming intoxicated by it, where we become overwhelmed by it and our actions careless. So, for example, in the heat of one's anger, a person may think, say, or do things they later regret once they've cooled down. This is why trying to think things through whilst overwhelmed by a mental negativity is ill-advised, as one has lost the balance of their mind and are generally unable to see the situation clearly. So expression of a mental negativity like anger is not a good option as to how to respond to it. So expression is not the way to go. Suppression is the second option of how we could respond to when we generate anger. So this is where the person works to suppress their angry thoughts by overriding them. They may try to change the subject that they're thinking about to something pleasant. They may do something like count from 1 to 10. They might visualize a serene image. They might recite a mantra to calm their mind. They may give themselves a hard time for thinking the way that they are, scolding themselves, telling themselves to stop it. They may do something else at the physical level so as to take their mind off whatever it is that's upsetting them. All these may be successful in the present to seemingly rid the person of their angry thoughts and unpleasant feelings in the body. But the problem is that it's only at the surface level of the mind. Suppression only drives the anger deeper down, where it's bottled up inside, where it becomes like a sleeping volcano ready to erupt again sometime in the future. If we continually suppress our anger, it only grows. It only grows the volcano, the sleeping volcano, along with its pressure to explode. Now, it's fine to first get away from something that may be triggering you. So, for example, someone trying to give up alcohol probably wouldn't find the best place for them to do that is by hanging around in bars. But once one is out of the lion's den, the third option for how to respond to anger, which is that of observation, is the way to go and the way the meditation prescribes. But how do we observe anger? It has no shape or color, and if the person observes the cause of their anger, then this will only make them more angry. The solution the meditation gives us is to observe the physical manifestations of how anger shows up in us, of which there are two. So the first way, or one way, is in our breath. Negative mental reactions like anger cause our breath to lose its regularity. It makes it harder, rougher, and a little faster. The other way negative mental reactions show up physically is in our bodily sensations or our feelings. For example, with anger, we feel all tense, like we're boiling up inside. Our breath and bodily sensations are on the other side of the same coin as our mental reactions. So if we put our attention on our breath or on our bodily sensations, it means that we are neither suppressing nor expressing our anger. We are instead observing it. And with our mind's attention now on the observation of breath or the physical sensations, it naturally stops us thinking our angry thoughts. It stops the angry thoughts in their tracks, which means we stop generating new physical symptoms of anger. This allows the physical symptoms that were already there, that we'd already generated, to gradually weaken until they pass away, and for our breath to regain its normality. This is a really important insight that comes from the meditation, and that is the reality of impermanence. So nothing lasts forever, including when we generate a mental negativity like anger. So when it arises, we don't have to manage it away. We just have to observe it and allow it to fade away of its own accord. Even if it stays for a while, it will still eventually go. Impermanence is a law of nature that is observable in the self as well as in the world and universe that surrounds us. So everything is impermanent, always changing. So stopping the negative mental reaction by observing the physical symptoms restores the balance of the mind. This allows us to assess the situation we're in clearly without being overwhelmed by it, which allows us to think or act in a way that isn't based in negativity. So when we observe our breath, we do so as it naturally flows in and out of our nostrils. We don't try to regulate it. As we observe, we bring our attention to the touch of the breath at the entrance of the nostrils. This natural observation of respiration is known as Anapana Meditation. Anapana purifies the surface level of the mind, stopping negative mental reactions in their tracks, including negative thinking. Observing bodily sensations, though, takes this a big step further. Doing so equanimously, which means without reacting, with craving for the pleasant sensations or with aversion from unpleasant ones, with a strong foundation of good morality, not only purifies the surface level of the mind, it also purifies the depths of the mind as well as the body. This is the technique of Vipassana meditation. On a Vipassana retreat, as taught by the teacher Goenka, the first third of any course is spent doing Anapana. So concentrating on feeling the touch of the breath on the small area at the entrance of the nostrils helps concentrate the mind to the single pointedness of the present moment. It also heightens our ability to feel bodily sensations in this small area, which then allows us to feel sensations more broadly throughout the body. So most people out there seem to be able to already do body scans when they're doing meditation. I hear quite a lot when people do meditation, they do body scans. So that is when they put their mind to it, they can generally feel different parts of their body, their hands, their arms, their legs, their torso, and so on. But after practicing Anapana for 10 plus hours a day for the first 3.5 days at a Vipassana retreat, one's awareness or ability to be able to feel their bodily sensations goes through the roof. It's like night and day. It's such a major difference. The subtler the meditator's ability to feel sensation, the deeper they'll be able to practice Vipassana. So observing sensation is crucial to the meditation process. This is because throughout our lives, we have continuously had mental reactions of aversion or craving that we have either expressed or suppressed. So all throughout our past, we've been doing that. This means that because we didn't observe them, we were instead expressing or suppressing them. Because we didn't observe them at the time and allow them to pass away, they still therefore reside in us. They're held within the fibers of our body as inner tensions and as knots and as agitations. So if you think of people when they go and get massages and they're like, oh, you've got a massive knot here, or you feel so tense, all this sort of stuff. So they're held within our bodies as well as in our brains, as they have affected our neuroplasticity, for example, our brain's wiring. So the technique of Vipassana, again, is based on a foundation of good morality, is to be aware of bodily sensations and to be equanimous or non-reactive to them. So by doing that, it means we aren't generating any new mental negativities in the present moment. So not generating any present negativities in the present moment allows room for our old stock of reactions to come to the surface and pass away, which they do as both unpleasant and pleasant sensations, but also as the occasional random thought. For example, a past memory that made you angry, like something that made you angry in the past, can just suddenly come up and just set things off. So we deal with these past sensations and thoughts in the same way as if they were happening in the present, that is, with observation. These old negativities are coming to the surface, to the present moment, so that we can deal with them or release them so that they pass away. This process literally releases bodily tensions and repairs the mind to the state it was in before we antagonized it with mental negativities. Crucially, the mind returns to its prior state with the wisdom of having been through what it has. As mental negativities are known as impurities, by releasing them, we're therefore purifying ourselves of them. This is why the meditation is known as the process of purification. Now, the best way to get these results is on a meditation retreat where one has the chance to work with strong determination in a setting that's conducive to meditation. And that's all done under the guidance of instructions from the late Goenka and his assistant teachers. Now, the Buddha explained the process of purification as likening us to being a short piece of rope that we've been holding by both ends throughout our lives. So if you just imagine holding a rope between your hands, and as we generate mental negativities of craving or aversion, it's like we're twisting and turning that rope, creating inattentions, sometimes feeling like we're tying ourselves up in knots. We can turn that rope so much. So practicing the meditation, he said, is like letting go of both ends of the rope simultaneously, so it naturally unravels itself back into its relaxed state once more. Another metaphor that explains the process is a large bonfire. So the burning fire that's already there, if we pretend we're looking at this fire, is made up of our past reactions. So the wood already on the fire are our past reactions. And when we generate new negative mental reactions, it's like us throwing more wood on it, thus making the fire grow, or at the very least, keeping it alight. So if we stop throwing wood on the fire, it will still burn for a while as there's fuel there for it to burn through, but over time it will burn itself out. This is the same as what happens with us as we work our way through our old stock of reactions. There will come a time where we eventually have burnt through them all. So one more metaphor that I really like that helps explain the phenomena of purification is that of a cut a person has on their body. So you imagine a wound, a cut. Now, in order for that cut to heal, the person must leave it alone, not pick at it or scratch it when it becomes itchy. If we scratch it or we rub it, we won't allow it to heal and we will likely make it worse. If we don't scratch it and leave it be, then it heals itself. Here, the scratching or rubbing represents us generating new negative actions. The wound already there is from our past ones. Now, this metaphor fits well for those trying to give up a bad habit of some kind. So you try to give something up and you just start getting itchy and you just want to scratch that itch. But if you let it go, you just go through that pain, then you come out the other side. So the way I like to look at that is, there's pain. If you've got a bad habit that makes you feel bad when you're doing something, that when you do it, there's pain that comes from that. If you're trying to give that up and it hurts trying to give it up, so there's pain there as well. So there's two pains. So if you go through the first pain, that leads you out of the misery, out of the suffering. Like the pain will eventually lessen. You'll leave it behind you, kind of thing. If you keep doing the bad habit, then the pain just continues on. It just keeps going down, getting worse. So as the meditation purifies us, the qualities of the purified mind naturally shine through with ever increasing strength. So these qualities are love, compassion, sympathetic joy at the greatness of others, and equanimity. Importantly, the self-observant nature of the meditation naturally leads us to understand ourselves more. So as we begin to understand ourselves more, we begin to increasingly see ourselves in others. So for example, we see that everyone generates their own mental negative reactions, their own tensions. And having now come to understand that to do so creates a state of suffering for ourselves, we understand that it also creates suffering for others. So this changes our perception and evaluation of what's going on. So that's the second step of that 4-step process. So if you remember, I said the meditation starts working on the third step, that of sensation, but it eventually starts changing your perception and evaluation, the second step of what's going on. So for example, instead of reacting with anger to someone verbally abusing us, we understand that this person is suffering negativity that they are looking to share with us. So that person's got negativity that they're looking to share. So instead of reacting with our own abuse or anger back, which is accepting their present of negativity and then giving back our own presence of negativity in return, we react with compassion as well as love towards them. So we meet fire with water. We don't meet fire with fire. So other meditation insights happen around the ego. And we can see that, we start to see that the ego is why such things happen as people taking offense to abuse. So the ego at the meditation is described fantastically well by Goenka as being like a shiny statue we build of ourselves in our own mind and then seek to build in the minds of others. So when we get verbally abused or we're challenged in some way that negatively affects the shininess of this statue or in a way that threatens to shatter it, then we react with vigor to defend it and reinstate it. Maintaining our ego, constantly adding polish to it, creates strong attachment to it. And that's a great source of inattention. The ego causes so much damage from the personal to the international, depending on a person's power or their sphere of influence. So for example, a world leader not wanting to admit they're wrong about something, or who wants to falsely project competency or strength, or who just tells people what they want to hear so that they'll be liked, can make decisions that negatively affects entire populations with dire consequences. Now, personal insights are clarified too through the meditation. So for example, you begin to see that one's culture, one's upbringing, what's happened to a person in their life, the lessons they've learned, the things they've studied, their careers, their life decisions, is what has shaped them to be the person that they are today. And as these things are true for me, so they are also true for others. As our empathy grows, so too does our compassion and our wisdom. We are able to see situations and scenarios from multiple angles, from multiple points of view. We are able to walk in the shoes of others with varying degrees of understanding of what that must be like for them, which in turn takes our level of comprehension from our own partial truth to a more complete picture of what the actual truth is, because we're seeing the situation from multiple viewpoints, not just our own. As the qualities of the purifying mind grow, so too does our own peacefulness and happiness. These fill up the meditator to the point where they begin to overflow in the form of well wishes for others that they may experience the same. This loving kindness is directed out to all those we know and ultimately further afield to everyone, to all creatures, including the entirety of our natural world and beyond. This is the meditation of loving kindness, or metta meditation, which is taught on the final day of a 10-day Vipassana retreat. It gives form to what has already been naturally developing in the meditator during their course, as the meditation has been slowly doing its work. This is not to say that these qualities weren't already in the meditator beforehand, it's just that they continue to grow stronger. Metta meditation wishes that all experience real happiness and peace. We wish for all to be liberated from their mental reactions of aversion and craving, for them to be free of ignorance, for them to be loving and peaceful. We also send these wishes to ourselves as we continue to grow on the path. Metta does not, nor cannot, have any limitations in who it is directed towards. It is a similar idea to the sun in that its warmth goes out indiscriminately in all directions. To attempt to withhold it from anyone or any group or creature is to work against its pure essence, taking one away in the opposite direction from their capacity to be able to generate it, as it means that they're generating mental negativities or defilements like greed, ill will, and selfishness in order to withhold it. The more one practices the meditation, the more the mind is purified and the stronger the qualities of the purified mind become. With the qualities of love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity comes an ever-increasing experience of happiness, which, as the masters say, only continues to grow as one further progresses along the path. These give their own pleasant feelings in the body. As our awareness and equanimity grows, we naturally come to live more in the present moment, the mind becoming more silent, existing more in the experience of feeling. This leads to a dissolution of the self as one melts into their surrounds. Along with this comes a deep understanding of connection, a oneness or harmony with all life and creation. Underpinning this connection continues to grow a deep admiration and affection for all, which is another way of saying love, a reality that underlies and interconnects everything. It is clear now that our psychological, spiritual, and physical well-being are all interdependent on one another's, not just with other human beings, but with the entire animal and natural world. As Sir David Attenborough puts it in his documentary called A Life on Our Planet, in this world, a species can only thrive when everything else around it thrives too. So when we look inside ourselves, things come into focus that otherwise would remain unseen or unclear. Our common morality being a substantial example of this. The rules of morality are universal. They do not change for anyone, any ethnic group, any political group, any nationality, any class or caste, or for any religion, regardless of what beliefs any of these groups may have formed about themselves or about their superiority to others. If a person breaks morality, either individually or as a group, if they break the golden rule, then this immediately causes them inner agitation and suffering, regardless of what they think they believe. This is the law of nature. The universal truth of morality, or the universal laws of nature, are within all of us for each of us to see and understand. Ignorance of their existence is not bliss. It only causes suffering, as they exist whether we choose to acknowledge them or not. The laws of nature punish those who do the wrong thing, but equally rewards those who do the right thing. There are those who believe and those who don't, that we are either punished or rewarded in the afterlife for what we do in this life. But the truth is that regardless of what happens after we die, we are either rewarded or punished in the present in accordance with our past and present actions. So in early 1996, I came away from my first meditation retreat with the basic understandings that I've outlined here in this talk so far. So this is the common experience that comes from practicing Vipassana, the simple technique of awareness and equanimity based on a foundation of morality. And to prove that, that's why today there are well over 200 and growing established Vipassana meditation centers around the world that have all been built off donations from those who have at least sat one 10-day course. It's a kind of pay it forward system where those who have gone before make it possible for others to experience. To do a Vipassana course is free of charge. And in this photo, you can see it's called Dharma Bhumi, which is the meditation centre up in Blackheath. There's two centres that serve Sydney. There's one that's recently opened in the Hawkesbury, but this one is the oldest, I believe the oldest one in Australia. And Patrick was instrumental to bringing Vipassana to Australia and setting up this centre. And you can really just see how big it is in that top. I took it from a Google map shot of it. That whole thing there is the centre. And then in the bush there's walking tracks and things like that. So it actually, I think, goes outside of that picture a bit. So for me, the insights gained through the meditation translated into a strong belief that a massive worldwide environmental movement was inevitable. The environment had always been on my mind for years, as it had become increasingly obvious that we were and still are damaging our natural world. With pollution continually being pumped into the air, the rivers, the ocean, the land, basically all into our closed atmosphere and biosphere where it is accumulating. The world is like one big giant room with a ceiling and floor, but with no walls. This ceiling is not eternal. Its limit is basically beneath the height you see planes fly when they're way up high with contrails streaking behind them. Most of our atmosphere exists below that. And yet we're putting all of our pollution into this closed system where it is only building up. In addition to this, there's deforestation on massive scales, significant parts of our natural world being exploited and ruined, ecosystems being lost, along with continual population growth that is putting ever more pressure on our world to provide. All of this made it clear to me at the time that if we kept going on in this way, it was inevitable that we would arrive at a major crisis point. And today we find ourselves in a number of crises, most urgently the climate crisis, and yet we're continuing on with our harmful ways. About 2 weeks after I finished my first Vipassana, I completed my second and came away from that one with the further realization that not only was a huge environmental movement inevitable, but that I had to do everything in my power to help it succeed. Now, seeing as I had a history of being involved in events and had just come out of college with plans of doing them for my career, this would mean putting on events along with other projects that promoted the benefits of the meditation, promoted the importance of cherishing the environment while celebrating it, promoted the solutions of how to rehabilitate our world's environment, along with how to live environmentally sustainably. So to basically do this project a part of our world. However, I was yet to learn one more important lesson, which is the reason why I haven't begun this project until now, the teachings from which are necessary to include. This lesson began upon my return from my second Vipassana. At the time, I was young and excited to have found my vocation in life. So naturally, I shared the idea with influential people around me, expecting encouragement along with support to move forward. I received some, but was mainly met with strong discouragement and resistance, not just over the course of 1 or 2 conversations, but over countless conversations over many years. At that time in 1996, in the politically conservative area that I come from, neither the environment nor the meditation were broadly things of much concern or interest. For instance, climate change at that time wasn't common public knowledge, nor were the benefits from meditation which has only in the past decade or so become mainstream as medical science continues to prove its benefits and more people experience them. So at the time, arguments were made to me that the environment was fine, that nobody was concerned about it, that the meditation sounded odd in that it wasn't a part of our culture, and that I was delusional to think I could play a role in getting people to care about either. For years, I tried to work out why these people think the way they do, with many maintaining these views, even in the face of increasingly clear evidence that man-made climate change is a real and present threat. The quest to understand why they believe what they do has often been frustrating, depressing, and even at times infuriating. The important lesson, though, came when I finally understood, only recently really, that these people aren't the main problem standing in the way of progress. The main problem is with the misinformation, disinformation, and the lies that are allowed to be pushed out to them that influences their opinion. This is done by certain politicians, media, as well as business interests who manipulate large parts of the population's ignorance of certain facts, who stoke prejudices, greed, arrogance, fears, and people's sense of tribalism in order to corruptly get their own way. All of us suffer from our own ignorance and blind spots, but some of us suffer from ignorance that causes greater damage than others. The individuals who make up the media, politics, and business referred to suffer from their own ignorance too, not only of the damage that they cause and of the positive possibilities that their actions stand in the way of, but also of the damage they are doing to themselves through their negative actions. They pursue money, power, along with their ignorant ideas of what their self-interests are, and in so doing, continue on with their damaging actions at the expense of others, including that of the environment. This behaviour is extremely damaging, not only to the environment on which we all depend, but it also strains social cohesion through the disputes that it causes between family, friends, colleagues, and the community in general. I've had my own experience of this and have seen multiple examples of others. Such lies cause disputes and conflict from the personal to the international arena. If news organisations, social media platforms, politicians, governmental bodies, business, or the internet in general were unable to misinform, disinform, or lie, then the dangers the world faces today would be significantly diminished to nil, and the problems we do face would be getting dealt with promptly to the best of human capacity, which is significant. There have to be real consequences for those who do lie to disincentivize them from doing so. Given the damage they cause, they have to be stopped. Today, our world is in real trouble with climate change taking effect. Around our world, we're seeing disasters caused and exacerbated by our warming climate. A striking personal example for me were the unprecedented, devastating bushfires here in Australia in the summer of 2019-2020. That was so large that their smoke circled the entire globe. Another example is the decimation of our Great Barrier Reef, a jewel of the natural world that has lost over half of its coral in the last 30 years, with 30% of that being in the last 5 years. Disasters like these are happening all around our world, with more and more people having their own experiences of them. This is all being caused by warming that has already occurred, that we have already put in the system. Yet despite this, we continue to turn up the heat by pumping more carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. By doing so, we not only ensure that these disasters will continue to happen, but that they will worsen. In 2011, I was honoured to be trained by Al Gore to be one of his Climate Reality Project presenters. This is a group that promotes the international scientific consensus on the climate crisis, along with the solutions for it in the hope to inspire positive action. I'm still a member of this group, so I have access to the latest information that they share with their presenters. Think about the cost of these following things continuing to happen in our world and only getting worse if we don't take strong, decisive climate action. Things such as increased floods and mudslides, increased droughts, increased wildfires or bushfires, increased changes in weather patterns. So for example, where, when, and how much it rains, which affects agriculture among everything else. Increased storm damage, increased melting of glaciers, increased famine, increased water insecurity, increased ocean acidification, increased infrastructure loss, increased climate refugees, increased political instability, increased species extinction, increased ecosystem loss, increased infectious diseases, increased sea level rise, the loss of our way of life, and much, much more. Yet with all these things happening, we as the world community stand by and watch this slow-moving train wreck without taking the urgent action required to avert it. Who would manage their own personal lives in such a way if their present actions were definitely taking them towards such terrible outcomes? The solutions to climate change are already known and proven. Renewable energies have been showing us what they can do around our world. Continual upgrades in their technology are making them increasingly inexpensive and more efficient. Throughout history, we've had the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, and now we are in the early stages of what is known as the sustainability revolution, which is the reorganization of the economy around new forms of zero emission, healthy, equitable, sustainable growth. The sustainability revolution has the magnitude of the industrial revolution combined with the speed of the digital revolution. It is the biggest new business opportunity in the history of the world and the greatest way to create new jobs. The overall task ahead of us is enormous, but we have both the resources and capability to pull it off. We have the know-how to achieve it. The solutions are already here and proven. They are constantly improving. For those who say we can't do it or who want to slow down progress, understand that they are compromised either by financial self-interest, by politics, by ignorance, by incompetence, by corruption, or by combinations of all of these things. Our world's health is crucial. It is like a giant base space station protecting us from the desolation of space, and we have to do everything we can to protect it. The challenge to not create new problems while solving today's issues further allows for more innovation and work creation through such things as major improvements in the recycling of resources. Our world is a wondrous place. It is a jewel like no other that we know of in the entire universe. It is as rare as anything could be rare. To call it priceless is to lessen its value. The project, a part of our world, strives for a world where the environment is cherished, the damaged parts are rehabilitated, and where we as human beings live up to our potential by achieving our ability to live sustainably as we continue to evolve to be ever more advanced. Our future can be extremely bright as it is possible to be. Imagine the heights of joy that our life experience will go to if we take on this task and achieve it. What a tremendous accomplishment this would be that we could all revel in. Our world is made up of individuals. All we can really do to achieve these goals can be done at the individual level and as a collective of individuals coming together as one. There are a lot of problems to fix, but the great thing is that we have people everywhere, each of whom is governed by the same laws of nature that punishes negative actions, including inactions, but rewards positive ones. We take our positive actions without waiting on other people to take theirs. We act to do our best, to have our strongest impact, to inspire others and to educate them into action. We take action that befits the situation, sometimes having to take strong action to stop others being harmful. If at an individual level we are truly doing everything that we can, then our conscience is clear. APOW means putting our best foot forward, not just in our personal life choices, but also in our actions to influence positively where we work, in our social circle, in our family, and to the extent of what is our personal sphere of influence in our world. And that last one is extremely important. Some people have so much influence and can do so much good with it. Politicians, business leaders, community leaders, opinion leaders, celebrities from all different walks of life. There are other people too with extraordinary gifts, talents, and potential who can have such a great impact in their selected fields. For those who don't think they have much influence or power, don't be discouraged, as the reality is one never knows how much they have until they try, or who their efforts may inspire. Besides, all of our efforts add up to being one effort. The natural world is such a beautiful place, from the landscapes to the creatures to other human beings. There is so much beauty aesthetically, in design, and in functionality. We must protect it all for the masterpieces that they are. That gives us so much joy to experience, for the essential roles they play in maintaining the health of their ecosystems, and for their overall contributions to the makeup of our biosphere as they help create the conditions for life in our world. It's true that there are many people in our world who are already in environmental action, but it is not enough. We need the overwhelming majority of all of us to be engaged. The path to sustainability being outlined by certain political leaders, media, and business is not urgent enough, as it is compromised by vested interest and a lack of strength. Our world is already in trouble. We need to be in full action now to effectively respond to the challenges we face, and we'll know when that's happening as there will be action going on all around us. It will be obvious. We all find ourselves here in the present with so much potential ahead of us. All the past of life and creation is behind us, and all the future is ahead. So let's be in action right now. In order for a forest to be green, each tree has to be green. In order for there to be peace, each one of us has to be peaceful. Let's individually make impacts that collectively are immense. Together, we are each a part of our world.
Anyone has any questions they would like to ask about meditation or any questions?
What are the actions that APOW is calling for?
Well, the actions that APOW are calling for are really, they have to do with, one thing that people can do is to do meditation, which is a very powerful thing to do. But other things that APOW is calling for is just its individual actions of environmental action. So within your own lifestyle, what you do environmentally, your environmental choices, but also if you're, for example, run a business, or if you have a large sphere of influence, then to use that, like if you're not doing the best that you can, then in your heart you know that, and it hurts you. Does that make sense? So you need to be fully expressed.
That does make sense.
We have Lance has a question. He raised a hand.
Yeah.
Lance, would you unmute yourself?
Hi Sam, thanks for the talk. It was great. You were talking a lot about anger, so I just wanted to ask a question. In terms of modern psychology, they have the 5 stages of grief, and other places they look at the 7 stages of grief. And of course, denial of climate change is very much like denial of any other tragic, difficult news to hear. So a lot of sort of thought thinkers have compared the denial of climate change to just being the first stage of grief, and so therefore anger, of course, is the second stage. And I guess the question I was going to ask is, do you see meditation, using this technique, the Vipassana technique, to sit through the anger? Is that going to be the best way sort of for dealing with that type of anger? Or do you think it could be, some combination approach where we integrate community responses together with that to sort of deal with the climate crisis?
Well, I think they say, time heals all wounds. And something that's interesting with Vipassana, I think, with that is that it speeds that up because of those different stages of grief. Like you go through anger, then you go, what are they, Lance? What are the different ones?
It's like anger. First it's denial, then anger, then I think there's resentment, which might be part of anger. Then there's like bargaining, I think.
Yeah. So I mean, if you don't know what's going on, like inside yourself, for example, so you're going through anger, and so most people, when they're going through anger, they're expressing it, they're suppressing it, they're in this inner battle. Whereas if you do meditation where you're just observing it, then you go through it fast. You go through that stage faster. You release it, because I think what happens is there's expression, suppression, then eventually people sort of just give up, like when they've been hurt by something, like the stages of grief, I think it is, isn't it? I mean, where they just surrender to it. Whereas Vipassana, you just surrender to it in the beginning. So you just sort of move faster through it. Would you say that's true, Patrick?
I think so, Sam. Yeah, you get all these stages, anger, grief, whatever it is. If you're angry, well, all right, you do your Vipassana. It helps you deal with your anger. You pass through that. Grief, again, grief is a reaction and it can be dealt with. It provides a sensation which you can observe. You can use your breath to deal with it. And in the end, you come to realize that grieving for someone doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you, doesn't help the person who's gone. And you come through it. And it's the same with all these stages. Emotional reaction.
Yes.
You observe your way through it using meditation, using your breath, using your sensations, and you come out the other side far, far quicker and far, far happier. It's as simple as that.
Because it also releases those old expressions in the past, isn't it? Like if you're going through anger, when you're observing anger, it's actually absolving your old anger as well. It's not just the anger that's being caused right now, it's those old reactions of anger in the past. Is that right?
Of course, and you come to the realization that being angry about someone passing away really isn't going to help anybody, least of all the person who passed away.
Yes. All right.
Now I'm just looking at the clock. We're over time.